It's one of the most intriguing locations in the world. Covered in darkness and miles underwater, this extreme environment is home to some unusual creatures and phenomena. It's called the Mariana Trench, and it's the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. No wonder it's been so difficult to explore. Because of the risky conditions, people aren't able to explore this location without proper equipment. But what would happen if we threw a steel ball down there? Let's start with some basics. How did they first discover this enormously deep hole in the ocean? HMS Challenger identified it back in 1875. The ship had some pretty fancy sounding equipment for its time, but it wasn't nearly good enough to be able to fully explore the trench. Some decades later, in 1951, another ship, the HMS Challenger 2, came back to the location better equipped. The vessel featured an echo sounder and was able to take accurate measurements of what seemed to be the deepest point on the surface of our planet. If you were to look at it in 2D, you'd see the trench measures 1,500 miles in length and 43 miles in width on average. It also looks sort of like a crescent-shaped scar when you observe it from above. Nothing out of the ordinary so far, right? Well, if you were to stretch a wire from the surface of the ocean to the trench's deepest point, it would measure a staggering 7 miles. If we were able to physically move Mount Everest, which is the Earth's tallest mountain, to cover the Mariana Trench, it still wouldn't be enough, falling short by about a mile. Because the Mariana Trench is so deep, it's almost completely covered in darkness, as light can barely get through to such extreme distances underwater. The temperature isn't any friendlier either, just a few degrees above freezing. But the most dangerous feature of them all is the water pressure. Right at the deepest point of the trench, the amount of pressure is about 1,000 times higher than the standard atmospheric pressure. Not a lot of people ever attempted to descend into the Mariana Trench. In fact, the first organized attempt took place more than 60 years ago. It was done by Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in a submersible. They only spent about 5 hours on their descent and a mere 20 minutes at the bottom. Alas, they weren't able to take any pictures. Until these two scientists were able to descend, specialists believed there was little to no chance that life could exist down there, given the conditions, most notably the extreme pressure. But while at the bottom, the submersible's floodlight caught sight of a creature. It was a very flat one indeed. As you can imagine, resources here are very scarce. What kind of creatures live down here? And how do they survive, given the harsh environment? Surprisingly, there is quite an abundance of wildlife living in the Mariana Trench. Some of these creatures fall back on chemicals to survive, like methane or sulfur, while other kinds of fish nibble at the marine life that's, well, weaker than them on the food chain. The most common creatures found here are xenophyophores, amphipods, and small sea cucumbers. Some of them adapted by hardening up their shell using aluminum harnessed from the seawater. Smaller creatures, like microbes, adapted by feeding on the chemicals emitted when the seawater hits the underwater rocks. They consider the Mariana snailfish the rock star of the area in terms of wildlife. They're small, ranging from 3 to 9 inches, translucent, and lacking any scales. But they're the top beast of prey in the area. It's no wonder some people started to believe that the ancient megalodon might still be living here. What was a megalodon, you might be wondering? It was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. Basically, the biggest and nastiest shark ever to have lived. Scientists believe it's been extinct for quite some time, and the idea that it might still be hiding in the Mariana Trench doesn't have a lot of supporting information. The megalodon would have needed to learn to navigate in complete darkness. It would either have to be bioluminescent or evolve to have massive eyes. More so, because of its school bus-like size, the megalodon would have needed a lot to eat. Microbes and small snailfish just wouldn't have done the trick. If a steel ball were to be dropped in the trench, what would be its effect on it? Would the ball be strong enough to sustain such pressure? Let's look at the science here. If we assume it's a solid steel ball, the pressure found at the bottom of the trench wouldn't be enough to really affect it and cause permanent damage. It would take it a solid 12 minutes to reach the bottom of the ocean, though. What about the temperature? Well, It turns out that the difference in temperature on the surface and at the bottom of the trench is quite impressive, a difference of about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So, it would cause the ball to shrink a bit, but yet again, once the ball returns to the surface, it would simply come back to normal. Should the ball get stuck there, there's another interesting question to answer. Would corrosion affect it? Corrosion of steel is highly dependent on the amount of oxygen in the water. The amount of oxygen dissolved in water remains constant at depths greater than 3 miles. I'll spare you the math, but it would take more than 10,000 years for the steel ball to completely rust under the sea. I can't help but wonder though, what would it take us humans to be able to survive at such extreme depths? Let's look at what was used in the past to explore this mysterious location. A little thing called syntactic foam. Why? Because it's the only material that can both float and resist the amount of pressure found here. Without this sort of protection, our lungs would rapidly collapse here. More so, the pressure from the water would push liquid into our mouths, replacing the much-needed oxygen with water. Then, there would be the much-needed ability to be able to come back to the surface, should anything not go as planned. One of the vessels that went for a deep dive here had 1,000-pound steel weights attached to it, so it would ensure its sinkage. These weights were connected to the ship by a special type of wire that had an increased corroding time of 11 to 13 hours in seawater, just in case something went wrong down there, and they'd have to bounce back faster. Given the harsh conditions here, the problem of oxygen supply is really important too. Any vessel looking to descend into the Mariana Trench again would need to consider some sort of device that can recycle the air in order to reduce the amount of oxygen that needs to be transported down there. And the last, but definitely not the least of all problems, would be electricity. There surely isn't a power socket down there for you to charge your phone. So, there needs to be enough battery life to support all the necessary equipment, communication, oxygen supply, lighting devices, and so on. None of these problems seem to be quite the challenge anymore, since, as of recently, you can buy a tour of the Mariana Trench. 3 lucky individuals were part of such a project back in 2020. They were submerged in a 3.5-inch thick titanium sphere. This ensured that they didn't feel any pressure changes and physiological stresses whatsoever. Each of the guests took part in an individual trip that had an estimated length of about 14 hours. The descent itself took over 4 hours. Once they reached the bottom, they got the chance to witness some of the most extraordinary creatures on the planet. Then it was time to start the 4-hour ascent back to the surface.
There is a place deep in the ocean where pressure is 1,000 times stronger than that we're used to at the surface. This force is enough to turn an unprotected human into dust instantly. Well, maybe more like mud. Anyway, that's why explorers need some serious preparation and equipment to survive in such extreme conditions down in the Mariana Trench. It is as wide as 20 national malls in Washington, D.C., and about 1/5 as long as the diameter of Earth. People who went all the way down describe it as a chilly, quiet, and very peaceful place. They saw a bright blanket of red and yellow rocky outcrops, and there was a whole variety of unique, small, translucent animals. The popular myth is that more people have gone to the moon than to this deepest place on Earth is not true, though. In total, 24 humans flew to the moon, and at least 27 brave souls dove down to the Mariana Trench. Most of them were explorers and not proper scientists. They just go there for the thrills and also to collect video evidence of different wildlife, geological formations, and human-made objects. Humans started traveling around space and into the ocean depths at around the same time. The first moon landing was in 1969. And the first person to go down the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, did so in 1960. This unusual location got its name after the British ship HMS Challenger, which first located this massive drop in the ocean floor at the end of the 19th century. It would take 8 more decades before the first human went down to it. Explorers didn't manage to do it in a conventional submarine. They used a type of submersible called a bath escape. The Swiss oceanographer Auguste Piccard designed his own in 1953. 7 years later, the submersible managed to do the impossible. It had reached a depth of nearly 36,000 feet. But what explorers saw was merely a fraction of the trench's full size. The fact that it is so huge of the Mariana Trench is just one of the reasons why it's mostly unexplored today. The absence of light is another major issue. Sunlight is incapable of reaching such profound depths, so the entire trench, from top to bottom, lies in absolute darkness. Because of such conditions, the ecosystem is a lot different than the shallower regions of the Pacific. This puts immense pressure on marine wildlife. Yeah, the pun is intended. Another reason why it's so challenging to survive there is the temperature. Water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the ocean is just a couple of degrees above freezing. One of the factors that hasn't let this area turn into a giant icicle is the fact that salt water has a slightly lower freezing point. The other reason is geothermal energy that warms the ground at the bottom of these just enough for it not to freeze. That's why submersibles need to have proper insulation to navigate these icy conditions. When they reach the bottom, researchers find out that this desolate and harsh climate is home to several animal species. They encountered arrow-toothed eels, snailfish, and spoonworms at various depths. There were even strange-looking translucent sea cucumbers and shrimp-like amphipods. The biggest surprise was microbial mats thriving on methane and hydrogen from the mud. Among the species, the Mariana snailfish looks like a master of the environment that can go farther and deeper into the trench to feed on prey than its competitors. Despite its seemingly fragile appearance, the snailfish has adapted to withstand extreme pressures, a superpower it wouldn't be able to survive without. The exotic life forms that live deep down aren't normal-sized, since deep-sea gigantism makes them grow significantly larger than their counterparts in other ecosystems. One example is the giant tube worm, which can be 6 feet long. Science has a hard time explaining the exact cause of this form of gigantism. Thermal vents are just one of the possible explanations. All of these factors might help explain the huge time gap in researching the Mariana Trench. The first successful dive after the 1960 expedition came only in 2012. That's when the famous Canadian film director James Cameron went down in the Deep-Sea Challenger. Because few scientists have gone that deep before or after Cameron, there is no map of the deepest point on our planet. We know very little about the oceans that cover 2/3 of the Earth's surface. Researchers have mapped out only 5% of them so far. Science still has a lot to discover in the Mariana Trench and other unexplored places on our planet. The Amazon rainforest stands as the best example of the world's most unexplored regions. The list of reasons why this part of South America is unknown starts with its wildlife. Jaguars, anacondas, piranhas, black caimans, and Brazilian wandering spiders are just some of the creatures that pose a risk for researchers. Relentless year-round rainfall induces heavy flooding. Add to all this some treacherous river currents, and you can see why scientists have mapped such a small percentage of the Amazon to date. In just one region of Brazil, near Peru, there are at least 14 tribes that have never had contact with the outside world. The national authorities intend to keep it that way. Isolation of these indigenous people is the best way to protect their future. The same goes for a remote island in the Indian Ocean. After the tragic tsunami of 2004, helicopters flew over North Sentinel Island to make sure its inhabitants were alive and well. Meanwhile, the Sentinelese weren't thrilled. They took up bows and arrows to drive away the unwanted visitors. This tribe is one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth. Although anthropologists and filmmakers visited the island in the late 1960s, we still don't know much about its indigenous population. It sits a long way off any shipping lanes in the Bay of Bengal. North Sentinel has no natural harbor, and it's surrounded by a shallow reef. This makes access to the island possible only by boat. The Indian officials who lay claim to the island have prohibited outsiders from visiting the island for safety reasons. The estimates on how many people inhabit the island vary significantly, from as few as 15 to as many as 500. The island is not tiny. It's about 5 times as big as London's Heathrow Airport. Apart from occasional contact during the past 2 centuries, the Sentinelese must have been isolated for a long time. They are related to other indigenous groups in the Andaman Islands, but their neighbors cannot understand a word of their language. The continent of Antarctica has no permanent human settlements at all. The only people who periodically live there are international scientists. This vast expanse of ice and snow, roughly the size of the United States and Mexico combined, still has many regions where humans haven't set foot. Satellite imagery and photos that NASA's aircraft made from the air have mapped out the entire continent. So we know where to go, but it's not that easy. The reason for this are all the adjectives that go with Antarctica. It is the coldest, windiest, driest, and brightest of the 7 continents. This makes it virtually unlivable. More than 99% of its surface is covered with a permanent sheet of ice. Its thickness ranges from 1 mile to as many as 3 miles in some places. That's half the height of Mount Everest. Now, the Himalayan range contains the world's tallest unclimbed mountain. It is also the tallest mountain in Bhutan. In the local language, the mountain's name translates as White Peak of the 3 spiritual brothers. Out of respect for the spiritual beliefs of the local population, national authorities restricted and then completely banned mountaineering at the beginning of the 21st century. To this day, there is no evidence that any climber has ever managed to successfully reach the summit of this mysterious mountain. Can you swim? Good. Because you're going on a journey to the deepest point of the Pacific Ocean. Now put on your flippers. The very bottom of the Mariana Trench is awaiting. Now get in the water. Really, come on. All right. 1 foot underwater. That's the depth you can swim with no special gear like a mask. Hey look, must be some tourists. Or whales. 10 feet underwater. That's a little deeper than the public pools and beaches around the United States. You can see colorful fish and even phytoplankton that feed on the sun's rays. 26 feet down. This is the depth at which the foundations of the floating city of Venice in Italy stand. Builders laid columns at that depth on which they later built houses and streets. 30 feet underwater. You start to feel a lot of pressure. When you're on the surface, you're under atmospheric pressure, 15 pounds per square inch. But here, at 30 feet, that pressure is doubled. All the air pockets in your body, like your lungs or ears, begin to compress from this pressure, giving you discomfort. But no worries, your organs are soft and elastic, so you can keep diving. 40 feet underwater. Oops, you're running out of air. An average person can hold their breath for 30 to 90 seconds. The current record is an incredible 24 minutes and 37 seconds. Gasp. Okay, you'll need some diving equipment to continue your descent. There you go. Thank you very much. Tourists dive to this depth to look at reefs and corals. You don't need special skills for that, but you can't dive any deeper without training or a license. 45 feet down. Be careful. There's sharks swimming here looking for food, like you. Sometimes tourists descend to this depth in a safe cage to see the sharks up close. You're better off staying away from these predators and not attracting their attention. So make sure you're not wearing any bright and shiny jewelry. Sharks love that kind of thing. 62 feet underwater. You could see the Aquarius Reef Base Lab in Florida at this depth, if you were in Florida. It's really an entire building with rooms for exploring the seafloor, accessible through a hatch. 105 feet down. You see a strange bell hanging from a chain. People used to use these things for deep diving about 400 years ago. They'd lower a bell on chains with divers inside from a ship. There was enough air inside the bell for them to breathe. That way, they could explore sunken ships with treasures. 140 feet. At this depth, you could find an entire sunken city in Qianda Lake, China. You can still see streets, houses, and temples there. 330 feet. Whoa! You almost hit a huge blue whale. How could you miss it? These guys, the size of 2 train cars, usually dive to that depth. Shh! Let's listen to them sing for a while. It's beautiful. Now, let's keep going. 660 feet. This is where most of the ocean life ends. Sun rays hardly penetrate any deeper into the water. Everything below are unusual fish like this angler. They have such an unusual appearance because they have to adapt to the high pressure here. 702 feet underwater. This is the last mark where you'd see a human without diving equipment. This man holds the title of the deepest man on Earth, and he's the only one who has managed to get to this depth. The water pressure on his body here was 20 times greater than that on the surface. 985 feet. Ooh, what was that sound? Whoa, that's a submarine. That's the maximum depth they can dive to. Some of them can reach speeds of 26 miles per hour. Fun fact, an ostrich can run twice as fast, but she can't swim. 1,090 feet. Say bye to this scuba diver. You won't see them any deeper than this. The world record was set in the Red Sea. It only took the diver 12 minutes to reach this depth, but it took him a whole 15 hours to return to the surface to avoid decompression sickness. So now you get an atmospheric deep diving suit. It's completely sealed, and you won't feel the insane water pressure on your body in it. 1,454 feet. If you stuck the Empire State Building in the water, its tip would be here, and all the carpet inside of it would be wet. 2,300 feet down. The water pressure here is 70 times greater than on the surface. The flexible plastic parts of your suit can't withstand that kind of pressure. So here's some urgent delivery. It's an ultra-deep submersible. Now you can continue your dive all the way down. 2,717 feet. Here you'd see the tip of the tallest building on Earth, the Burj Khalifa. Alright, who's sinking all the tall buildings around here? 5,387 feet. This is the depth of one of the oldest and deepest lakes in the world, Lake Baikal. Its area is slightly larger than the entire country of Belgium. 8,040 feet. That's the record depth the Perdido oil platform reaches in the Gulf of Mexico, and its above-water part with 3 decks is almost as high as the Eiffel Tower. 11,962 feet. This is the average depth of the Atlantic Ocean. You can see a huge tube as wide as a giraffe's neck, and it just seems to be endless. True, this cable connected Europe and North America and used to serve for telegraph communications. 12,303 feet underwater. Suddenly, in the darkness, you see the outline of a ship. No way! That's the Titanic itself. The intense water pressure would crush a person at this depth, so you can only dive down to the Titanic in a submarine. 13,123 feet. Whoa! Here would be the end of the deepest mine in the world, Imponen Gold Mine in Africa. But you still have deeper places to go. Let's speed up. 20,000 feet. Here you can see the deepest debris of an old ship. The USS Johnson sank more than 70 years ago. You can still clearly see the number 557 on its bow. 26,200 feet. Here, in this total darkness, you'll find the deepest fish in the world, the Mariana snailfish. They're as long as a domestic kitten and have almost transparent skin. Their eyes are poorly developed for vision because the sunlight never reaches this deep. 29,030 feet. If you take Mount Everest, flip it over, and stick it into the Mariana Trench, this is exactly where you'd see its tip. Even though this is the highest point on our planet, you'd still have a lot deeper to go. 35,755 feet down. Here, in the Challenger Deep, you'd still see life. You'd need a microscope for that, though. Bacteria living here feed on organic molecules, similar to oil. A little deeper? Congrats! You've touched the bottom. It's 36,070 feet deep. The pressure here is 1,071 times higher than on the surface. But you're not the first person to have been here. One of the last expeditions to the bottom of the Mariana Trench was in 2012. An American filmmaker descended here in a submarine he designed himself. but the pressure broke some of the engines, so it was hard for him to maneuver here. The sonar was also damaged, and some of the batteries drained. He was in the Challenger Deep for about 3 hours and took many pictures and videos. If you look closely at the bottom itself, you can see bubbles. It's carbon dioxide and liquid sulfur. It's freezing here because of the extreme pressure and temperature close to freezing. But there's still life here in these harsh conditions. The 3 microorganisms are most common here: xenophyophores, amphipods, and small sea cucumbers. There's so few of them because they don't have enough food down here. Usually, there's a lot of palm leaves on the ocean floor, which get there from the land. But the Mariana Trench is 124 miles from the nearest islands. So the only food here is old plankton and fish scales from the ocean's upper layers. But it needs to travel tens of thousands of feet to become food for the bottom dwellers. But can you go even lower into the crust of the Earth? Well then, you'll need to unleash your giant drill and fire up the jet engines. You're pushing another 36 miles through the Earth's crust, and here is its edge. You've entered the upper mantle. It's an ocean of hot lava, 1,800 miles deep. You have to literally swim through this, reaching the outer core, another 1,400 miles deep. Then you reach the inner core, another 755 miles, and congrats! You're at the very center of the Earth. I hate to ask, but how do we get out of here?
Do you remember when you were a kid and dug deep holes in the wet sand at the beach? You kept digging and digging, wondering where you'd end up if you never stopped. Well, wonder no more. This video has got you covered. Let's explore how far down you may go and what you can find there. And by the way, who knows, maybe someone's already used some fancy schmancy tech to dig all the way down to the planet's core, and we're just clueless about it. Let's dig in. At a depth of 2.3 feet, you'll find a whole lot of tunnels made by moles and rabbits. And get this, those moles are insane at digging. They can make a tunnel longer than 65 feet in just one day. If you dig a bit more, around 6 feet, you'll hit the standard burial depth, in Western culture, that is. Interestingly, the phrase 6 feet under didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was actually a rule implemented by the Mayor of London during the plague outbreak in 1665 to prevent the spread of infection. If you want to see something really gross, look out for deep-burrowing earthworms at a depth of 10 feet. Some species, like Drawita grandis, can grow up to a whopping 3.5 feet long. Yuck! Did you know that a metal detector can only reach a maximum range of 20 feet? If you're trying to find something buried deeper than that, you're out of luck, unless you've got a high-end detector that might be able to pick up a car at that depth. But if you're looking for something small or using a lower-end detector, forget about it. There was a guy named William Little, aka the Mole Man, who lived in London and dug himself a burrow 26 feet deep under his own house. He started way back in the 60s, and it took him over 40 years to dig the whole thing. And get this, the network of tunnels he made stretches over 65 feet away from the house. That's some serious digging. But if you want to see some real animal digging skills, go down almost 40 feet and you'll find the deepest burrow ever made by an animal. You would never guess who dug it. Ready? Nile crocodiles, that's who. If you ever find yourself 60 feet underground, take a look at Beijing's underground city. It's an emergency shelter that's basically a huge network of tunnels and rooms underneath China's capital city. How cool is that? Go down further to about 110 feet below ground in London. You'll find an underground farm where people grow veggies and herbs. Now, let's dive deeper. Literally, the Y40 diving pool in Italy is the deepest swimming pool in the world, and it goes 131 feet down. It's so deep that a free fall into its pit without water takes around 3 seconds. This is actually quite a lot, even if it doesn't sound like that. At about 280 feet underground in Cappadocia, Turkey, you'll find the Derinkuyu Underground City, a vast ancient underground complex that presumably dates back to the 7th century. The channel tunnel that connects the UK with France is 377 feet deep. The roots of a wild fig tree growing at the Echo Caves in South Africa go down to 400 feet. And these are the deepest roots we know about. How about spending the night in the deepest hotel room in the world? It's located 508 feet underground at Salas Silver Mine in Sweden. If you're an adventurous runner, you might be interested to know that the deepest half marathon was held in 2004 in the Bochnia salt mine in Poland, at a depth of 695 feet. Are you a fan of engineering feats? The Seikon Tunnel in Japan is the deepest railway tunnel in the world, at a depth of 787 feet. And if you want to drive deep under the sea, you can do so in the Eiksund Tunnel in Norway, which reaches a depth of 942 feet. The deepest hand-dug water well in the world is at a depth of 1,286 feet. It's called Woodingdean Water Well, and it's located near Brighton in the UK. The well was dug in 1862, and most probably it's also the deepest hole dug without any technological aid. Kudos to everyone involved. If you're an adventurer, you might be interested in the deepest natural shaft in the world, which goes down to a depth of 2,110 feet. It's located in the Vrtoglavica cave in Slovenia. And a free fall down this shaft would last for a heart-stopping 11 seconds. In 2010, 33 Chilean miners were trapped at an even deeper depth of 2,297 feet in the San Jose copper and gold mine. They were stuck there for 69 days until they were finally rescued. Moving on, the deepest bat colony in the world resides at a depth of 3,800 feet in a zinc mine in New York. About 1,000 brown bats spend every winter there. Now, the deepest concert in history. The Finnish band Agonizer performed at a depth of 4,166 feet in a mine in Finland in 2007. Imagine rocking out in a venue that deep underground. The deepest coal mine is the Jindřich II mine in the Czech Republic. It was shut down in 1991, but it used to go all the way down to 4,920 feet. Now let's talk about the Grand Canyon. You might not think too much about it, but it's actually super deep. The deepest part of the canyon is about 5,920 feet down, and on average it's about 5,282 feet deep. If you're feeling adventurous, you might want to check out the Krubera Cave in Georgia. It goes down a whopping 7,185 feet, making it the deepest cave in the world. The deepest radio broadcast ever happened in Creighton Mine, Ontario, Canada, which is 7,677 feet below the Earth's surface, and it was held by CBC in 2005. And if you want to get even deeper, there's the Jinping Underground Laboratory in China, which is 8,202 feet underground and the deepest lab in the world. The Moab Khotsong gold mine in South Africa has the deepest single-shaft elevator in the world. It's located at a depth of 10,203 feet, and if you decide to take it, it'll take you 4.5 minutes to reach the bottom. Free fall into its shaft would take as much as 25 seconds. Deep in the Tautona mine in South Africa, at a depth of 11,811 feet, the deepest known multicellular organism has been found. Guess what it is? Obviously, a worm. Oh. Let's remain in the Tautona mine for another moment. Here you can reach the deepest human destination in the world. The temperature down there is a scorching 151 degree F, and the journey takes more than an hour. The oceanic crust has an average depth of almost 20,000 feet, which is also the depth at which the deepest known microbes were found in rocks below China's Songliao Basin. At a depth of about 36,000 feet, we find the Mariana Trench, the deepest point of the ocean. But people have gone even deeper than that. The Kola Super Deep Borehole was until recently the champion of the depths. It's the second deepest artificial hole on this planet, with a depth of 40,355 feet. The scientists once attempted to drill through Earth's crust in a massive project. However, they only managed to drill a third of the way before the drill couldn't operate anymore, due to the temperature reaching 356 degree F. This hole is not easily recognizable as its diameter is just 9 inches, and it looks unremarkable. Nevertheless, it is well covered to ensure people don't accidentally fall into it. If you were to drop a coin into the hole, it would take 50 seconds to hit the bottom. If you are wondering which artificial hole on Earth is the deepest, it's the Z44 Chavo oil and gas well. The depth of this hole is a staggering 40,604 feet. equivalent to the height of 15 Burj Khalifas stacked on top of each other. What's the deepest underground you would dare to go? Share your craziest ideas in the comments below.
Wanna high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. The vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name, its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they get caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel-eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near-freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move. So it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, You might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallimorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago. About 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. But there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The sea angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The squat anemone shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The coconut crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The slender snipe eel. Slender snipe eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The sea pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian carpet flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. It doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The flamingo-tongued sea snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves.
If you could dive right into the mysterious darkness of the ocean depths, who knows what you'd come upon? Legends that are hundreds of years old mention some giant sea monsters hiding deep down below the ocean waves, like the Kraken, the Loch Ness Monster, the Hydra, Leviathan, and so many more. Okay, no one has ever seen such monsters, but there are still weird and unusually big sea spiders, squid, worms, and many other animals that grew way more than we'd expected. Take a look at the colossal squid from sub-Antarctic waters. It's around 14 times longer than the arrow squid that lives near New Zealand. And deep down in the Pacific Ocean, there's a sea sponge as big as a minivan. Oceans contain about 96.5% of all water on our planet. Up to 80% of all life on Earth we've discovered is under the oceanic waves. We haven't explored, mapped, or even seen more than 80% of the ocean. In fact, we've mapped Mars better than we have the ocean bottom. The pressure down there is insane, and it would make you feel like you're holding up almost 50 jumbo jets, and temperatures at such depths are extremely low. Conditions deep below the oceanic surface are harsh, so creatures that live there need to adjust. That's why many of them grew very, very big to survive. Creatures that live in cold, dark depths are so big because of a phenomenon called deep sea gigantism. The deeper you go below the oceanic surface, the less sunlight there is. That's why the temperatures drastically fall. The result of this is increased cell size and longer life of creatures. Also, these creatures don't have as much oxygen as the marine animals that live in shallower parts, and their food sources are minimal. Much of the food they get comes from shallower waters, and only a little bit trickles down to the deeper parts. And when there's not enough food, being large is an advantage. Larger creatures can move farther and faster to find something to eat. Their metabolism works slower. They don't digest the food that fast, so they can store food and conserve energy for hard times when they can't find anything to eat. They don't need to regulate their body temperature either, which also helps them save some energy, which they can then transfer to other body processes. They mature more slowly and later than those living in shallow waters. The majority of fish species that dwell in deep waters live 30 years or even more. Orange ruffy fish, on the other hand, live up to 150 years. This fella grows 24 feet in length and weighs up to 1.5 tons. But it grows to be so big for centuries. They start looking for partners when they're 150 years old, and they can also live this long because there are not so many predators at such depths. Also, there are no humans or other things that can disturb them or endanger their existence. At such depths, the environment is pretty stable, so many animals there are like living fossils because they probably haven't changed in millions of years. The first 650 feet of the ocean's depth are considered to be the open ocean. The majority of the marine life we've discovered lives there, since that's the area the sun can still reach. And then, as you continue going deeper, you reach the twilight zone. It seems like nothing lives there. But at about 820 feet, you see a small oasis of ancient life blooming. For example, there are sea lilies, animals that have been living at such depths unchanged for millions of years. Coelacanths, another living fossil, have been living in the ocean for more than 360 million years. Hagfish haven't changed in a very long time either, for over 300 million years. This creature lives at depths of 5,500 feet. They evolved before the rest of the vertebrates, which is why this is the only living animal without jaws or a spine, even though it still has a skull. Deep-sea creatures can't survive in shallow waters. They've evolved to live in depths under bigger hydrostatic pressure. Humans and other organisms that have internal spaces filled with gas would end up crushed if we could go to such depths. That's why deep-sea divers always need to wear special dive suits designed for surroundings with higher pressure, even though they're not going that deep to the areas where these giants live. But near Antarctica, you can see gigantism way closer to the surface, like giant sponges, sea slugs, sea spiders the size of a dinner plate, worms, and even some enormous single-celled organisms. They all tend to chill in shallower waters. Scientists are not sure why exactly, but they think it could have something to do with oxygen. Giant species use just a little oxygen, and the waters around Antarctica are pretty rich in it, which means there's hardly any limit to these animals growing bigger and bigger. Back to deep-sea creatures. As mentioned, they had to adjust to strong pressure, so they almost don't have any air gaps in their body at all. They're mostly water-based, and since water is incompressible, which means it's not something you can compress, it helps them stay unaffected at such high pressure. But because of all that, If they were to go up towards the surface, they'd probably swell up, maybe even explode. Just look at the blobfish, the one that takes the title of the ugliest animal in the world. It looks normal deep down below the surface, where its natural habitat is. But when it gets up to the surface, where the pressure is 120 times lower, it changes its shape. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or muscles, so without high deep-sea pressure, it ends up being all floppy and saggy. The dark oceanic depths are not just scary to watch, but to listen to as well. In 1997, scientists were trying to find underwater volcanoes located off the South American coast. During their travels, they recorded one of the loudest noises ever registered. It was pretty weird, too. It was so loud, even sensors from more than 3,000 miles away managed to pick it up. They later called it the bloop. It took them 15 years to conclude the sound came from an ice quake. That's when seismic activity breaks frozen ground. Water at the bottom of the ocean is not always extremely cold. There are hydrothermal vents on the seafloor, and the water that comes out of them can be up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Powerful pressure, yep, the same one that would crush you, is something that doesn't allow the water to boil. There are hundreds of animal species that live near deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Some of them, such as tube worms, are not like anything we have seen before. These worms absorb chemicals from vent fluids. That's how they feed bacteria that live in them. And in return, those bacteria give them the carbon the tube worms need to survive. 2/3 of all of the coral species scientists discovered live in dark, deep, and extremely cold parts of the ocean. Some even live in parts that are 3 miles deep. They can survive at low temperatures, such as 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of these cold water corals are more than 8,000 years old. They form amazing structures that can rise up to 115 feet tall. The deep is not just a mysterious world of unusual creatures. The landscape under the oceanic surface is magnificent too. The canyons hiding there make even the Grand Canyon seem small. For instance, check out the one located in the Bering Sea, the Jemchug Canyon. Its vertical relief is more than 8,500 feet deep. That's huge. The largest ocean waves are not the ones you can see from the shoreline. They occur under the surface, and they're called internal waves. They take place between two water masses that have different densities. They travel at speeds of thousands of miles per hour and can be 650 feet tall.
It looks like a prehistoric creature that came from the time of dinosaurs. This scary beast is called the basking shark. It can grow up to 39 feet. People have only reported 3 of them in the past 160 years. The last sighting was in 2015, and before that, about 80 years ago. These sharks sometimes rise to the surface to filter out small animals, such as shrimps and other small crustaceans, when they want to have a nice, tasty seafood dinner. But when there isn't enough grub at the surface, they go down to the depths of almost 3,300 feet, where they tend to stay for months, which is something researchers discovered using satellite tags. Tag, you're it! Now, basking sharks like to spend their time in more temperate waters, but they can migrate long distances. They live across the globe, but in warm tropical or subtropical areas, they won't go near the surface because they're not fans of high temperatures. The lion's mane jellyfish is not that rare, but it's fascinating how large it is. It's the biggest among jellyfish species and the longest animal. Its total length can reach 120 feet. That's approximately 23 feet more than the longest blue whale scientists know about. The jellyfish has around 70 to 150 tentacles, and they all contain huge amounts of neurotoxins that can seriously harm you if you come in contact with the animal. But people don't usually come across this type of jellyfish because it rarely lives near the coast, preferring the open ocean. Generally, you can find the lion's mane jellyfish no deeper than 65 feet below the surface, where it dines on small fishes, zooplankton, and some other types of jellyfish. It uses its tentacles to catch its value male. Hey, you want fries with that? The giant phantom jelly comes out of the darkness and depths of the ocean's midnight zone. Its sun hat-shaped bell reaches over 3 feet across. This bell trails 4 ribbon-like mouth arms that can be up to 33 feet long. This quite rare creature uses its mouth arms to catch unfortunate animals swimming around and not knowing what's coming for them. Giant phantom jelly propels itself through the water with periodic pulses coming from its orange head. It glows faintly and mysteriously in the pitch-black depths. It lives across the globe in all the oceans except for the Arctic. I'm guessing it's too cold. Because of its odd shape, people often call the oarfish the dragonfish or sea serpent. It's about 26 feet long, which makes it the longest bony fish we know about, and lives at depths of 3,300 feet. Oarfish spend most of their time in the deep, dark parts of the open ocean in tropical and subtropical areas. They almost never come to the surface, unless, invited. It's a ribbon-shaped and shiny silver creature with a long red dorsal fin and red oar-like pelvic fins. Its body has no scales and is very thin. The fish can grow to a length of about 30 feet and weigh 660 pounds. Oarfish have really big eyes that help them see better in their dark, scary surroundings. The frilled shark is definitely one of the gnarliest-looking marine animals out there. If you saw it somewhere, you'd probably think you went back to the age of dinosaurs. Yup, the frilled shark is a prehistoric creature because its roots go back 80 million years. This living fossil can grow to be 7 feet long. It got its name from its frilly gills. Even though frilled sharks have the shark part in their name, they swim similar to an eel in a distinctly serpentine way. Its mouth is terrifying. Similar to the maw of the great white shark, it has 300 trident-shaped teeth lined in 25 rows. Hey, come a little closer, huh? Researchers discovered this creature in the 19th century, but people rarely see it, and no wonder. It usually lives at depths of between 390 and 4,200 feet. Most of the time, the frilled shark feeds on squid, swallowing them whole. Its long jaws allowed the frilled shark to gape extra wide and swallow animals half as long as its entire body. Goblin sharks are very rare. Researchers have spotted fewer than 50 of them in more than 120 years. But maybe that's for the best, since we're talking about a pretty scary fella with a narrow snout and sharp teeth. It's also capable of thrusting its entire jaw outward when it wants to catch something. Sounds familiar. As it's lurking through the dark depths of the ocean, a goblin shark sees a small squid that looks quite yummy. The dangerous animal inches toward the squid. When the poor creature notices the predator, it tries to dart away, but it's too late. The shark has already thrust its jaw the whole 3 inches out of its mouth. This jaw is connected to the flaps of skin the shark can unfold. This helps a lot because the goblin shark is a sluggish animal, so it's pretty hard for it to chase its food. After finishing its lunch, the goblin shark puts its jaw back in its mouth and swims away as if nothing's happened. Goblin sharks mostly live at the bottom of the ocean. Like many other shark species, they prefer swimming alone. Here's a silver-colored creature with very rough skin. That's the ocean sunfish, with a total length of almost 11 feet. Its other name is mola. The ocean sunfish is the heaviest of all bony fish out there. People sometimes call it a swimming head because of its bizarre appearance. These creatures have such a weird shape because they're born with a back fin that never actually grows. It just folds into itself as the animal matures and creates a rounded rudder. The sunfish is a bit clumsy. It moves with the help of its mighty fins that allow the animal to swim on its side. This marine inhabitant is a solitary creature. It mostly feeds on zooplankton and jellyfish. The spotted wobbegong is one of the world's rarest sharks. It grows to be more than 10 feet long. It may not look as terrifying as some of its shark relatives, but it's pretty good at catching unsuspecting animals swimming past, mostly during the night. The animal has a spiracle, which is why it can breathe while staying still at the bottom of the ocean. It's motionless most of the time, which is why you can barely notice it. Its flat body and large pelvic and pectoral fins blend in with the underwater terrain. That's why they're so good at hiding. This ability helps when these sharks want to protect themselves too. Wobbegong means carpet shark. They usually live close to the ocean floor in coral reefs, on sandy bottoms, and under piers. People have even spotted the shark in the water that is barely deep enough to cover its flattened body. Now, blobfish lack teeth and bones, so they can't actively hunt. Since they don't have much muscle mass, they can barely move around. Hey, I had a roommate like that once. They get their energy from animals they scoop up from the seafloor. They also know how to conserve this energy. That's how it usually goes with deep-sea creatures. They don't have as much food as those animals that swim closer to the surface. Instead, they have special body mechanisms that allow them to save energy for the times when they don't have much to eat. Pressure at the depths where the blobfish lives is 120 times as high as that at the surface. That's why the bizarre creature looks like a weird gelatinous mass only when you bring it up to the surface. The pressure here is not strong enough to keep its body together. Hey, breaking up is hard to do. The white margin stargazer could compete with the blobfish for the title of the ugliest animal in the sea, don't you think? Now, this animal has eyes on the top of its head, together with an upward-facing mouth which the creature uses to hide itself in the sand. That's where it spends most of its time, with only its eyes protruding from the sand. It chills this way until some small animal passes by. It can lunge at its target incredibly quickly, literally within milliseconds. This creates a vacuum in the water that pulls in a crab, fish, or some other small, unfortunate animal. Another tactic involves venom. This fish has a venomous spine in its shoulder blade that helps with catching other animals and defending itself against enemies. Even though it's not related to the electric eel, the white margin stargazer can generate an electric shock as powerful as 50 volts. Ow!
There's not much to do in Antarctica except scientific work. You could check out the wildlife, like some cute penguins and seals, and you'd get to see the occasional whale swimming around. Antarctica is one of the biggest lands out there that's only inhabited by scientists and researchers from all over the world. These scientists dug a hole through some pretty thick ice to study the ancient air and how the atmosphere cleans itself. They used a special drill and dug a clean cylindrical hole 450 feet below the surface. Some of this ice can be up to 800,000 years old and is a good indicator of what the climate was like in the past. It's like checking out tree rings to determine how old a certain tree is, except it's more complicated than that. After the effortless digging, they decided to drop some ice to the bottom of the hole to see what would happen next. They heard some really unusual sounds. It felt like being on a spaceship traveling through a bunch of obstacles with many rocks smashing into each other. The pitches changed over the quick descent of the block of ice, ranging from high pitch and ending with a low heartbeat-like sound. The scientists were puzzled when they first heard this and dropped some more ice, only to find out that the same type of sounds were being produced, just in different variations. They couldn't tell what was down there, and, more importantly, why these kinds of sounds were produced. Antarctica boasts quite a few volcanoes, many of which are under super thick sheets of ice. Scientists discovered 91 volcanoes and claimed there could be more, potentially making it the most extensive volcanic region in the world. While they were doing regular scientific research, they came across many unmistakable large cone-shaped figures underground. Some were as deep as 2 miles in the ice. Some of the peaks were over 3,000 feet tall and dozens of miles across. But on the surface, it's as plain as a sheet of paper. They may have dropped that block of ice inside an actual volcano that they were standing on, but it's unlikely. Even though the underground volcano presence was discovered by accident, there's a small chance they were actually standing on one where they had their workstation set up. It's more likely that they worked in an area where studying ancient climates is easier and less dangerous than other places. They collect ice samples and study them in a lab. It's like discovering a prehistoric insect embedded in amber millions of years ago when dinosaurs used to roam the land. But instead of little bugs, scientists study ancient dust, air bubbles, sea salts, volcanic ash, and anything else that may have come from the environment. They can practically tell how the climate was during that time. These ice samples might show that Antarctica's western ice sheet melted when the Earth's climate warmed up. If it did, then it's likely to happen again. That would mean sea levels rising, affecting coastal cities and small remote islands. But scientists aren't sure it's true, despite some evidence to back it up. The process of studying ice samples can take a week or even a year, depending on what they find. They crush or melt the sample bit by bit. And like those tree rings, the deeper the layer, the further we go back in time. In order to study ancient bubbles trapped in ice, researchers have to crush the samples under a vacuum hood to keep the air out while extracting the air and putting it in vials. There are various instruments and devices to study the ice samples, but because it's so sensitive to damage, each measurement must be in a clean room setting so that nothing gets compromised. The scientists have to wear proper bodysuits and many layers of gloves and constantly get ventilated. Even something as tiny and insignificant as a fingerprint can ruin a sample. They look for certain patterns to see changes in the atmosphere's composition and temperature. But dropping a few blocks of ice down a hole wouldn't be so bad. The reason why it made such a peculiar sound is the same reason why a moving car sounds different when it's honking than when it's stationary. The scientific word for it is the Doppler effect. It's an obvious change in the frequency of a wave with respect to an observer who is moving relative to the wave source. The effect doesn't mean the frequency of the sound changes, it just shifts. And this can be said about other types of waves, like water and light. But sound waves are the most popular ones when it comes to the Doppler effect. So, when the scientists dropped the ice block down the bottom of the hole, the sound waves traveled back up and bounced around the narrow tube where they drilled. That's why they got the pew pew sound. Let's not forget that this ice block traveled 450 feet beneath us. Oil ships dig holes in the oceanic crust that go thousands of feet beneath the Earth. The Kola Super Deep Borehole in Russia is the deepest hole ever made by humans. It goes more than 40,000 feet below the surface and took almost 20 years to reach 7.5 miles. Below it is only half the distance to the mantle. In terms of the whole Earth, this very deep hole is literally scratching the surface. This wasn't a hole to dig for oil, and wasn't in the ocean either. The drilling was stopped in 1992 when the engineers found out that the temperatures were 100 degrees Fahrenheit higher than they predicted. And then it was abandoned, and it's just been a barren hole now. But that's the closest we've dug to the center of the planet. The scary thing is that some of the workers on the site could hear voices coming from within. All the way in Yemen, an ancient hole exists in Barhout, in the east of the country in the middle of the desert. It's actually closer to Oman than to the capital Sana'a. This hole has puzzled experts and locals. Unlike the holes in Russia and Antarctica, this wasn't man-made. Or was it? It's been around for many years, and the locals try to steer away from it. They don't even like talking about it, since they claim it brings bad luck to those around it, or to whoever utters its name. They claim it was created as a prison for spirits, but many rule that out. The hole is 98 feet wide and somewhere between 330 to 650 feet deep. You can also hear strange sounds coming from the inside. But according to some scientists, the well has little to no ventilation and barely has any oxygen down there. So it's unlikely that anyone or anything lives down there. The Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench caught some low-pitched grumble sounds in March of 2016. Some of these grumbles were followed by screeches. They caught these sounds in a span of weeks, using a titanium-encased microphone so that the immense pressure of the lowest point on Earth wouldn't crush it. They had to lower it slowly as well, since it's 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For 23 whole days, the microphone recorded typical sounds of whales passing by and boats sailing across from above, and even rumbles of nearby earthquakes, but they still couldn't determine what caused those initial sounds. The researchers couldn't understand if the noise from the bottom of the Mariana Trench was caused by humans or was natural. They also wanted to know if these sounds affected marine life, like dolphins and whales that rely on echolocation. They still can't figure it out. but scientists estimate that the ocean is about 10 times noisier than it was 50 years ago. With technological developments in shipping, submarines, and underwater construction, the ocean will only get louder with time. Northern lights come with sounds, which nobody talks about. They're usually audible when the auroras are at their most powerful presence. Scientists were always puzzled as to what caused the faint popping and crackling, even though they were very far above us. They used some special microphones and found out that the sounds came just 230 feet above us, which is pretty low. They're caused by electrical charges gaining power in a specific region of the auroras. The electrical charges are disturbed by magnetic storms that fire up the northern lights. As a result, some tiny sparks are released into the atmosphere, causing the faint crackling and popping noise.
450 million years ago, no, I wasn't around then, the sea level was higher, coral reefs started to form, the climate on our planet was stable and warm, not even dinosaurs were around yet. The time when bony and jawed fish we know as sharks appeared. They've been dominating the oceans and making other marine creatures flee in fear ever since. Many of them, like great white sharks, have evolved and adjusted to life in the open ocean as hunters with a pretty high position in the food chain. They're less diverse today than before. One of the reasons is the asteroid strike from the age of dinosaurs. After it reduced the number of shark species, only smaller and deep-water kinds that ate primarily fish survived. They started getting bigger over time. Near the surface, sharks such as makos or great white ones develop faster movements and are somewhat between gray and blue to blend in with their surroundings. The epaulet shark can even walk on the land. It can't take a walk on the beach because it can't breathe outside of the water, but it lives on coral flats in shallow tropical waters, so it can walk in kind of a crawling motion. But deep down below, there are mysterious, alien-looking, often huge shark species that didn't come to the surface, which is why they didn't need to adjust to the new environment and different conditions. They haven't changed a lot through time, so they're some living fossils. These creatures mostly don't have 5 gill slits, the most common number, but 6 or 7. It's because there's less oxygen the deeper you go in the ocean, so they need more gill slits. Sharks on the surface evolved to have fewer gill slits. 6-gill sharks are the most primitive sharks we have today. Their skeletons are like those of ancient extinct sharks, and they can survive only in very deep waters. Like cats, sharks have a layer of reflective cells placed inside their eyes, which helps them see better in the dark, deep sea or cloudy waters. Sharks on the surface have big eyes because they evolved to hunt in the sunlight, so they tend to rely on their vision. Those that live in shallow waters have small eyes, so they can protect themselves from the sand. Like some other deep-sea creatures, 6-gill sharks also have bigger eyes to take in as much light as possible. They have more light-sensing rods, but don't distinguish colors that well. In the ocean's twilight zone, with the minimum of sunlight, there's a couple of bioluminescent shark species. They don't take in light within their eyes, but produce or re-emit it with their bodies. Their skin or organs have specialized cells that produce a soft blue-green light. Deep-sea creatures that produce their own light do that to attract their prey, deter animals from going after them, or, scientists think, communicate with each other. It can even help them to camouflage. They do it by hiding their silhouettes from animals going after them. They produce enough light to match their surroundings. The biggest luminous underwater creature is the kitefin shark, found swimming 980 feet below sea level, preying on groundfish or smaller sharks. It can grow almost 6 feet long and lives 3,200 feet below sea level. Deep-sea sharks are also bigger than those on the surface. The Greenland shark can grow up to 24 feet long, bigger than a great white. There's a thing called deep-sea gigantism. Creatures in nutrient-poor depths of the ocean grow bigger because, that way, they lose less energy as heat. The Greenland shark lives its life in slow motion. It has a slow metabolism and can go very long periods without food. With their slow pace, they evolved to live up to 500 years at depths of 7,200 feet. Sharks in shallow waters catch their prey relying on agility and speed, but for them, it's easier because there's plenty of food on the surface. Deep sea sharks, with less food and slower life rhythm, had to develop a different style. They're more opportunistic, definitely not picky, and don't care if their future meal is alive or not. Frilled shark, another living fossil from the darkest depths, hasn't evolved much through time, and they're one of the last of their kind, with all of their relatives already gone extinct. It grows up to 7 feet long, primarily hunts on squid, and catches other sharks and fish. It looks like a dinosaur, a snake-like face, a long, smooth, thin body that moves in a serpentine way. It can propel itself with the power of its tail and curl like snakes. They don't swim in a straight line like other sharks. Cookie cutter shark grows up to 20 inches. It got the name because of the way it feeds, biting off small pieces. It's a parasite creature, which means it feeds off bigger animals but leaves them alive. They have sharp teeth and sometimes even swallow those that fall off on purpose. Some researchers think it could be because they live in the depths that are nutrient poor. If they swallow the teeth, they could recycle calcium and other material from it. Prickly shark is a rare and unusual creature with many thorn-like denticles and 2 small dorsal fins. It lives mostly in the depths of the Pacific region up to 1,900 feet. Ghost sharks are not even real sharks, but fish closely related to them and rays. They have big pectoral and pelvic fins, 2 dorsal fins, pretty big eyes, and unlike their cousins, have a single external gill opening. Ghost sharks have slender tails and can grow up to 80 inches, silver to blackish color. They sometimes live in rivers and coastal waters, but also in the depths of the ocean of 8,200 feet or even deeper. They are pretty weak swimmers, so they tend to feed on invertebrates and small fish. Goblin sharks. Swimming through the deep sea, this creepy shark with a flabby body suddenly sees a small, innocent squid. It goes toward it, but the potential snack notices it and quickly starts moving to dart away. It seems like the plan could work at first, but then the shark suddenly thrusts the jaw of its mouth and catches the poor little squid in a second. After the meal is finished, the animal simply fits the jaw back into the mouth and goes away as if nothing happened. This is possible because it has a jaw connected to 3-inch-long flaps of skin, which is why it can unfold from the snout. It can grow up to 12 feet long with a weight of 460 pounds. Scientists think goblin sharks are mostly active in the morning and evening. The shark has a long, prominent snout and specific sensing organs on it. It uses them to sense electrical fields in the dark oceanic depths. Seven-gill shark is a big cow shark, brown to silver-gray on top, white underneath, black and white spots, with a thick body, a small dorsal fin, and a wide, blunt snout. It can grow up to 10 feet long, mostly lives in the depth of 1,870 feet, but you can also find it in deep channels and bays. It can be aggressive toward humans if provoked, so don't. Like most deep-sea creatures, it's an opportunistic hunter that's not quite picky but likes to go after dolphins, seals, porpoises, and other marine animals. Megamouth sharks mostly live in the depths of 15,000 feet and spend most of their time in the dark, like me. Scientists discovered it in 1976 because it went near the surface at night to feed on zooplankton. That's the only time these sharks go there. During the day, they return to their quiet, dark, and mysterious depths. They are filter feeders, which means they keep their mouths wide open while swimming, so they filter the planktons they like to eat. There are organs that produce light inside of their mouths, which attracts potential prey, such as pelagic crustaceans. These sharks live in the deep parts of the ocean, but you can rarely find them below almost 2 miles. Scientists think some other, stronger bony fishes outcompeted them. Deep parts of oceans became oxygenated around 70 million years ago, and sharks have been around way longer. But bony fishes adjusted and adapted efficient ways to use oxygen, while sharks were slow with adaptations, so they lost. Also, oceanic depths are way colder, which is challenging for fish and the rest of cold-blooded animals because the speed of their metabolism widely depends upon the external temperature.
Hello, Brightsiders! Do you know where the deepest place in the world is? I think it's in the Pacific Ocean, near the Philippines and Papua New Guinea. It's the famous Mariana Trench. So let's take a tape measure very long one, and attach its end to the boat on the surface. Now we hold our breath and jump in the water. Fish and marine animals swim by. We descend lower to the depths and into total darkness, and after several hours, we reach Challenger Deep. The tape measure shows a depth of 36,200 feet. The famous Mariana Trench is not the deepest place on Earth, as everybody thought. The Kola super deep borehole located in Murmansk region in Russia beats it by a wide margin. And scientists have discovered something unusual and sinister there. When geologists were drilling the hole, they could reach the depth of 9 miles. And then they encountered voids. Scientists on the surface were surprised and scratched their heads and then decided to lower a microphone and dozens of other sensors in these voids. The temperature down below turned out to be 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the microphone recorded something that sounded like human groans and screams. Many people thought the scientists had been able to drill into the underworld. The shocked people up above had already begun to panic, but suddenly an unknown creature jumped out of the drill pipe. It looked like a black goat that walked on its hind legs. Its body was shrouded in black flames. The creature got out of those deep hollows and ran off into an unknown direction. Okay, wait. These are just myths that one newspaper published on the 1st of April. It's International Joke Day, by the way, but many people believed it. It made many believe the scientists working at the borehole had opened a portal to the nether, and that now horrible, outworldly creatures were free from their imprisonment. But like with any myth, there's some truth to it. The deeper the scientists drilled, the higher the temperature got. At 3 miles deep, it was 160 degrees. At 4.5 miles, it was 250. And at the maximum depth of 7.5 miles, the sensors recorded a temperature of 413 degrees. One day, scientists heard a loud explosion underground. They stopped working and everyone tried to find out what caused such a loud pop. But there was seemingly nothing there. After a while, they continued drilling deeper, and at the same depth, no accidents happened. The drilling began in May 1970. They passed the first 4.5 miles quite easily, and it was primarily hard granite rock. It was like drilling through a hard wall. But then their drill went into softer layers, and the shaft of the hole began to crumble. It was like drilling in wet sand. Every time the workers took the drill out, there was a risk that the hole would collapse under its own weight. As that eventually happened, the scientists picked a new direction to drill, and you know what's interesting? In the end, the map of the entire well looked not like a straight beam from top to bottom, but like a tree trunk which had diverged into many different routes. 9 years later, scientists reached the depth of 31,400 feet and broke the world record for the deepest borehole. By 1983, they made it another 8,000 feet deeper. After a brief pause in the work, there was an accident. A part of the drill broke away from the main body and remained in the borehole. For several months, scientists tried to extract the drill, but nothing worked, and they had to return to the depth of 4.5 miles and start all over again. The drill was divided into sections, and one such unit could only last about 4 hours before it had to be replaced. In terms of depth, that was only about 32 feet of drilling. Then the drill was lifted to the surface, replaced, and lowered back down. On average, the drilling speed was about 200 feet per month. That's like a 20-story building. In 1990, 20 years after the work had begun, scientists reached the final depth of 40,000 230 feet. That's like 100 soccer fields down. And after another accident, the work stopped. Guinness World Records registered the Kola Super Deep Borehole as the deepest borehole in the world. It's like Mount Everest plus 9 Empire State Buildings on top of it. One of the most unusual discoveries at the Kola Super Deep Borehole was that the soil at the depth of about 2 miles almost perfectly matches the composition of the surface of the moon. It has given us more insight into how our ancient satellite appeared and formed. It seems that in the early stages of Earth's formation, a giant asteroid crashed into our planet. With that kind of force, it caused an explosion so powerful that part of our planet broke off and flew upward. This chunk of Earth remained in our planet's orbit, cooled, and later formed into the moon we know today. Another surprise for the workers was the presence of gold. There was about 2.5 ounces of gold for every ton of soil lifted. The deeper the scientists went, the older the rocks were. In layers of rock about 2.8 billion years old, they found fossilized remains of living organisms. It made the world of science bubble with excitement, as it meant that life on our planet appeared 1.5 billion years earlier than first thought. In the early 1990s, they shut down the drilling project. Gradually, the buildings around the borehole and the drilling equipment were lost. Today, a lot of tourists visit the place. It's because of those same myths about creatures from the underworld. Yes, there's a hole 7.5 miles deep under that rusty lid. But the scientists working there never reached their goal. They wanted to drill into the Earth's mantle, but to do that, they would have had to dig down to a depth of about 44 miles. At 200 feet per month, it would have taken as long as 80 years. That's assuming no accidents happened. But the deeper it goes, the more interesting it gets. A few years ago, they found a massive amount of water deep underground. Somewhere up to 370 miles down, there's a substantial ocean billions of years old, and the amount of water there is several times greater than in all the oceans, seas, and rivers combined on the surface of Earth. The water there is at a scorching 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. But because it's under a tremendous pressure, it doesn't evaporate. It's encased in a crystalline structure of minerals. This ocean was formed in the early stages of our planet's development, when there was only hot lava and debris of space bodies around. But the most exciting thing you can find by drilling is living organisms. They've been there in isolation for billions of years, and they can give us clues as to how life came into being in the first place. Scientists in Antarctica have created a similar borehole. An entire lake half the size of Lake Ontario was discovered under the thick ice. The amount of water in this lake is only 3.5 times less than in the Lake Baikal, the largest lake on Earth by volume. The ice that hides this lake is at least 20,000 years old, and the water beneath it has been isolated from the outside world for about 15 million years. While drilling, scientists lifted a chunk of ice from deep down below and found an unknown bacterium on it. Its genetic code was only 86% similar to known living organisms. That means that we've never seen bacteria like this before, or it had come from outer space. But that's just a theory. We know that these bacteria can live in unusual conditions and at water temperatures below freezing. The composition of underground lake water is also different from what we're used to. There's a lot more oxygen and carbon dioxide in it. Add to these conditions complete isolation, and we get living organisms that have developed and evolved in a completely different way. Do you understand what it means? The study of deep organisms may give us a clue as to whether life could exist beneath the ice on other planets or their moons. For example, Saturn's moon, Enceladus, has ice 24 miles thick. There may be an ocean underneath, which is heated by thermal springs. That's all for today. And guys, remember, let's become smarter every day together with Brightside.